Hi, my name is Benedict. This video we're actually going to walk through Janus 4, Janus 4. I've heard it pronounced various different ways, but the Greek or Roman god of looking both ways. It's a name I've used in synthesizers actually for as long as I've been making them. Why I put it back on this, I don't know, but it's always the name that I've given to my flagship, my biggest, my bestest, and this struck me as being that. And it does look forward and back at the same time. It looks back to the idea of a single panel modular, and of course looking forward because it is in software. So I will walk you through how it works. Now there is a lot of this, so you're going to need to be patient. Otherwise, you can just work it out for yourself. Don't mind either way. Okay, just so you can see, we're putting a little bit of reverb on with the Rev T1. Just to make it nicer to listen to. Listening to a dry sound for a long time can get a little less than fun. There's a tiny bit of saturation and just going into a mastering thing just in case we get excited. So, Janus 4. 4 because we have 1, 2, 3, 4 oscillators. Quite simple. It is a modular polysynth. Now that was the thing that started me on doing this. I have thought about doing a modular polysynth for a very long time. I've spoken to quite a few developers about, hey, can we do this? And I've drawn them out for them, but for whatever reason, it's never come through. My idea was to have something quite a bit like this. Initially, I wanted to do it a different way with a modulation matrix like that on the bottom of Thor or Europa, but that's not so easily doable as this system with patch chords is. There are some slight possibilities that your DAW may have a moment or two over the patch chord thing. Sometimes I do in Reason, but more often than not, it works. If I'm having issues, close it, open it, back to work. Nature of the beast. In Reaper, I don't seem to have any of those issues. Not that I use Reaper much. So let's kind of try and start from the beginning. In many ways, nothing much in here is wired up. That's probably one of the concepts that a lot of devs that I spoke to kind of freaked out about. This synth is not designed for somebody who just wants to buy, I don't know, Predator 28 with all 50 million presets so they can just preset dive until they get the sound. It's fine, that's your thing. You're probably not really spending the time looking at this anyway. The idea is to be a modular, but to be polyphonic, because most modulars are monophonic. It's an awful lot easier to do for several reasons in monophonic than it is in polyphonic. There is some polyphony starting to creep into them, but the other problem is that you open this thing, you've got no modules. It's like you've got to reinvent the wheel every time. And there is a format that has been used by some manufacturers in the past, several Roland, ARP. They built essentially single panel modulars. So they put all the boxes you are going to need onto one panel. So rather than having to reinsert these boxes every time, they're all there on the panel and they stay in the one spot. So as I say in the blurb, if you're looking for the sample and hold, it's always here. It's not like, oh, where did I put that on my screen? It's here. It's always here. So it makes it a lot easier to live with. Yes, in theory, it means you can't have 28 sample and holds, but let's be realistic. How many times do you have 28 sample and holds? If you're going to answer that, whatever. You probably already own one of those modulars where you've got to pull the boxes on screen. Different concept here. The fact that this is polyphonic means that you can run it in mono or poly if you want, but to me, I find it really frustrating. Start making it sound like, oh, wow, that's really cool, but no, now I can't play it the way I want it played or the way my song wants it played. We start with very basic routing. Now, if nothing is plugged in, nothing is plugged in. One of the differences is that with lovely, a lot of those systems where you've got all the modules in one panel, there is an underlying routing. I deliberately decided not to do that at all. So if it's not routed together, it is not routed together. If you're not making any sound from this, you have broken your routing somewhere. That can be annoying, but this is a sound designer's synth. Doesn't mean anyone can't use it. Please do dig right in. But it does require a little more from you than something that's pre-routed. So very simply, let's pull almost everything out. So we have an oscillator. The usual suspects in terms of forms. Where's my filter? There. Ramps, triangles, pulse waves, white noise, and not so white noise. Not that we're racist about our noise. We have to route that somewhere. So our convention here is that if this box is red and it's audio, if it's orange, it's control voltage. But the system doesn't care. You can route any output into any input, and you will get a result. It may not be a good result, but you will get a result. So there is absolutely nothing wrong with routing audio out into a CV in. Nothing at all. So there's very little that you can't do. There is a natural convention with regards to outputs and inputs. An output is going to be square. The audio output, CV output. An input is going to be round. So output goes into the input. Once you've got that, while it looks like Explosion in a Spew Factory, it really isn't. You've got a very couple of basic conventions. We've got audio, which is red. We've got outputs, which are square, and inputs, which are round. So if you want to move an audio to an audio, then just look for the color and the shape. Square into round. Yes, square peg, round hole. Easy to remember. So where do we go? We put the square peg in the round hole, because that always works out. So we start with our oscillator, pitch it, up into bat territory, -12, +12. A certain amount of this does rely on you just knowing where things should be. I know the ARPs, you never knew whether you were in tune or not. This can help you a little bit more than that because you don't have one knob that covers the whole tuning range. But the fine tune, yeah, good luck getting it perfectly in the center. No, we shouldn't want it that way. We can turn our key follow into strange places. You're going to want that at 1 for typical chromatic tunings, but the fact is you can put them to strange places. Musically, probably not useful, but it's unusual to find that. And I've often deferred to decisions where you can do things that are unusual. Breakability, unusualness is really important, especially in this environment. So basic oscillator, these are all exactly the same as each other. That's what they do. We can send our oscillators to filter. The usual suspects. We'll come back to filters in a moment. Now we've got control inputs. We can do things. So let's take an LFO and send it to pitch. We can control how much goes. We'll get on to the details later, but we can control what is sent. We can control what is received. All of these knobs here, like a lot of these, are bipolar, which means that off is vertical. Something's happening, it's off. Again, getting it to perfectly off is going to be close to impossible. Not because I'm being difficult, simply because this is reality with a synth as though this were hardware. You want that gone, then you either need to turn it off somewhere or pull its pin. Now you'll see, to route, we take a click, just ordinary left click, drag. It'll show you where it can click into. It won't click into something it can't click into. See, can't really make a mess. We then click, it's routed. If we want to get rid of it, we've got to click right on that wire and remove the cable. Put it there. Find the point where it goes into the jack, click on the cable, it'll say remove cable. Gone. So we can adjust pitch. We've got 2 inputs for pitch. Now we can run multiple things into any jack. If you're taking them out, it'll take the top one out first. Yes, sometimes you might go, but software can do better. Of course it can, but this can't. That's the way this works. It's a price of entry. So we've got a couple of options for pitch. We've got PD, which is phase distortion. You'll know it as FM. Actually, we won't use that. We will use this. Let's just go with the sine wave. If you haven't already listened to the presets, you'll hear that there are some really beautiful, clear tones that are possible with this. So PD is phase distortion. It is phase distorting the oscillator, so you get that classic Yamaha FM sound. Why did I not call it FM? Because FM can be done differently. Real coarse FM is done this way. It'll get all kinds of interesting. The other option is pulse width modulation. To do the PWM thing, we probably want a pulse. We can set where it is, our bass thing. It will naturally seem larger, more is happening than up here. Nature of pulse width happens on every synth. If that bothers you, then you can put it through some kind of control, which we will discuss when we get to the bay. And you can also sync an oscillator to another sync, to another oscillator. So in this case, so that this oscillator here is resetting its shape every time this one crosses a 0. So it will pull that out of tune. There are various ways you can use that. But it's a great way to make really hard-edged, gnarly, interesting sounds, or to add a little bit of bite to something. So that is your oscillator. They're all exactly the same. There is no difference between any of these oscillators. So you can mix and match as much as you want. You can turn the key follow off and turn an oscillator into an LFO. So if you're going, oh, you haven't given me enough LFOs, and we'll discuss that later, then yeah, I've given you 4 of them. You might have to sacrifice an oscillator, but there are options. There are other options to discuss later too. Now, the next place you're going to want to go, obviously, is to a filter. You're going to wire whatever it is to the filter. For the moment, we'll just wire our oscillator straight to the filter. We can take a second oscillator and wire that in as well. Now, you'll notice there's no volume output here, deliberate. If you want to mix those oscillators with then you're going to put them through the bay. We'll come to that later. For the moment, if you're just going to do it this way, then you don't need to use the bay. Simple 2 oscillator chorusing. Filter. Filter 1 is a Moog-style ladder. The single most versatile filter in the world of filterating things. Filter 2 is a 12 dB state variable. Quite a different feel from it being 12 dB and from it being the state variable style. Now we can choose which output we use. Bandpass, really nice. Nice for making simple on-dash phases. So, of course, you can run outputs from all 4 of these at once. There is absolutely nothing to stop you from running the audio from there and then saying, oh, I'll run the high pass to modulate this. Super. It's not always a good idea, but you can do it. So 2 filters, entirely up to you which you use. You can wrap them one into another. Remove that, there to there to there. Actually, we'll go high pass, easier to. Find that bass boost trick, which I'm not a fan of, to be honest, but you can do it. Or, of course, we could be running ourselves into this. Just to smooth off our top end a little bit. Or we could be running into our, out of our, to there. So now we're going to filter 2 first, taking our low pass. Let's actually not take our low pass, let's take our, let's say our band pass. Might go, yeah, look, our band pass is great, but it's too toppy. So you can route it anyhow you want. Requires a little more work, yes, more versatile. That's our filters. Our output should be fairly self-explanatory. We've got simple pan, one side or the other. If they've got the ability to show the numbers, you can type in numbers. It's easier in some hosts than another. It's better if I press a 0. Same with the main output. These are fairly simply controlled. Your output will take, by default, it's already wired into ADSR 3, simply because that's closest to it. But you can wire in anything, absolutely anything. Remember, anything can go anywhere. You could wire in audio from an oscillator. Exciting. Bad plan, but exciting. A pan, of course, you can control with something as well. But we'll stop that because it's really disconcerting in headphones. Envelopes. We've got 3 of them. Exactly the same as each other. They look a little funny. They've got a few more controls than your average envelope. The first one is that you can turn on or off whether it's triggered by MIDI. Most of the time you're going to want to leave it on. That's why they're defaulted to on. But you can actually input something else to trigger those. For the moment, let's just take the output, send it to it'll become Wendy Carlos. We've got 4 shapes here. Exponential is your classic analog synth shape, so it means that rather than being straight, they're curves. Linear is more digital synth. The other modes are kind of more extreme exponentials, but exponential will give you that fast feel that most people want most of the time. But if you're finding that they're kind of too fast, switch to linear. Really simple. Now, if we turn that off, it doesn't work. If we pull our LFO and plug it in here, mandolin. As soon as you unplug or turn that back on, even if this is plugged in, if that's on, then it's going to defer to the MIDI before it listens to whatever's coming into the jack. You can do a little bit of both, but it's really not designed to be able to do both. Otherwise, it would make little sense. To be honest, I've forgotten what these controls do. Okay, that makes that work. Isn't that embarrassing when you've forgotten what some of the things on your own synth do? Fixed is required to make it work. Controls as input and what it's doing in some way. I'm sorry, I'm going to have to look that one up. Maybe I'll put it on the screen. I'm doing this in one pass. I'm not coming back to edit in what this is. It's not a feature you will use very often, but I put it in because, whatever it is, it's one of those things that if you did want it, you'd be like, why is it not there? And I could do it. So that's why you've got some odd things in here. Most of the time, you're not going to use them. Simple, very simple control of filters. Next thing that we've got, well, we've handled our LFO really. It's got our rate. You can use a pulse wave and reshape that pulse. You've got the amount out. Let's just assign it to our filter. It can be small amount for vibratos or full amount. Control the rate. If you've got the pulse, controlling the pulse shape. Which is incredibly useful when you're sending that in to control something else. It's super cool using a pulse width of a different shape, or from through controlling things across CV. So that's why that's exciting. We can fly in CVs from other places to adjust our rate. So let's fly this guy in here. There. To there. It's probably too fast to give us everything we want, but it will do that. Most of these sorts of things you're going to want to bring in external control, which we'll discuss later when we get there. You can adjust rate and you can adjust the amount. So again, we can pull this in here. You can hear that working. Put some delays and some more filtering and what have you on it. Cool sound. Of course, we've got the usual white noise and what have you. Now, if you want to do sample and hold, if we wanted to make our filter go wibbly blibbly blibbly blubbly, we would take our sample and hold output and apply it here. And we would give it 2 inputs. So here's one. Here's another. Now we've got to get them the right way around, doing enough stuff for them to be interesting. If they're not interesting enough, they will actually do nothing. So don't be surprised if the first time you plug it in, you get it wrong, because it's quite normal. Let's try that back around this way. Now there's no particular direction in which, here we go, in which case, in which one of these should go in. We can control how much of the voltage is sent from here and from here. The aim is that as much as possible we can have control to be more subtle. There are some synths you turn them on, their control voltages, LFOs and what have you, go straight from 0 to huge amounts, and it's like yuck. Excuse me as I tea. Ooh, and someone goes ping. Hi, Daryl. So you can feed, as you see, anything to anything, and it's going to get interesting or complex. how those two sounds interact. You can spend ages and ages messing around with them, getting frustrated or not getting results or whatever, but just keep trying. If you're after classic bleep, 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 bleep robot noises, one of them has to be white noise, the other has to be well, it doesn't have to be, but one will commonly be white noise and the other will be a sine wave or something like that. And it's just the points where they trigger that it goes, oh, I'll have that, oh, I'll have that, oh, I'll have that. And so you get that regular bleep, 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 bleep kind of thing. Now, you again can use that for absolutely anything. There is nothing at all to stop you from doing something like this, which may or may not result in anything remotely useful. To there. Ooh. See people being very excited by that. So again, the excitement comes when you start to realize I could put anything anywhere. Next, we've got external. We can fly extra audio in. I'm not going to here, but you can choose your audio input pins, however it happens in your DAW's world, and fly some extra audio in and whack it through the synth. As to what results you get is all going to depend entirely on what you put in and how you process it. Whack your guitar in, put your sister singing pornographic ditties, don't know, don't care. You can put stuff in and then bring it up into the system. It comes in again as audio, but you can do whatever you want with it. So you could have your sister's pornographic ditty singing, doing your, having a slight GUI glitch. So you could have your audio in, doing phase distortion. It does what it normally does, which is in that situation, it does the thing, but it just doesn't draw it. That, I think, is a reason thing. You live with it. So external audio can be brought in. Key follow. So whatever note you play can be sent to control something. So if we pull that cable out, it's making our filter brighter. That does behave monophonically or paraphonically. So whatever value it gets, it's not going to work like a real neat and tidy polyphonic synth all the time in that sense, but you can apply note number to another parameter. It has its uses, definitely worth doing. The right place and time. Ooh, cool. Velocity. Exactly as you expect. Aftertouch, provided you have it. If you're an EWI or something like that, you might set your breath to aftertouch or whatever you normally do, but it's another source. We've got CV ins. Now, CV ins, there is no actual input on these. There is, however, and this again comes down to your DAW entirely. I'm going to show off this because this is, I think, one of the coolest things in Reason, even though it is one of the most incomprehensible things in Reason. This is a rack extension that will do almost anything to LFOs. issues. There we go. So if I pull this in, and I've got to find it, everything's in alphabetical order here, so it will arrange everything methodically, but you have to learn to find them. See? My knob is now flying around like nothing on earth. How exciting. I can take that and send it somewhere. Cool. Helicopter. These will not be perfect for audio rate stuff because they work on a batch system. Most doors will work on a batch system. I've got to get in, Daryl. But you can use that to its advantage. So it kind of has a bit of a sample and hold based on your batch system, your audio rate, what your sample rate is that you're working at. So I can be using my LFO to do this. Known issue, the bottom part of this button doesn't always work. The top corner will. It's because I've got so many controls close together. So I can be using my internal LFO to do something. Let's put that to a sine wave. Flying in something else, that's not going to work there because it's the wrong kind of rate. So you can fly in signals. Again, how you do that is going to depend on your door, but most doors will have a way to send a signal from somewhere else, anywhere. Physical controller or an internal doohickey like this, and you can get this knob being activated. You can then take whatever this knob is having done to it and fly it around somewhere else. Of course, we can fly it to our... because that's not going to be annoying at all. And then we can get into whatever your external device is capable of making have happen. We'll just turn that off for now. So it's not bringing any signal up there, so we might as well unwire that, so we're only seeing what we're doing. Get rid of that. So that's your 4 inputs. Of course, you can, provided your system is happy to do it, you can automate any of these parameters. They may behave interestingly compared to some other synths, but you can do it. The bay. The bay is interesting. The bay is where you can... Everything we've done so far has been pretty straight. I unplugged that and I put it there. You don't always want to do that. Often the excitement with modular is that I can take something from one place, modify it with something, and then send it somewhere else. And it's the bit in the middle that can make it really interesting. So the bay serves several different functions, either independently or all at once. It is a tricky one. So the bay has 4 inputs. We'll put aside the rig modulator for the moment. It has 4 inputs, which are routed to a level control, which is, again, bipolar. So we could take our... and say, I want that one to come in upside down. In other words, its phase has been reversed. Because it does sound slightly different. We then have the ability to change the level of those. This is one of the few knobs that is unipolar. So fixed from 0 to full. We default that to halfway, so this can be used as a signal reducer, a volume reducer, a level reducer. Is one of its things. So this fixed is automatically routed to each one of these. So turn down the volume, turn up the volume. If we undid that, it's still going to affect it, but we've got the ability to control what's happening here to output these as CV signals. So I could take this, for example, and let's FM it to itself. We've got several ways in which we can control. Now you'll see, if you go through the presets, you'll see several uses of this. You're not going to use it all the time, but when you go, oh geez, I've got this signal over here, and I want it to go there, but I want it to be changed in some way in between, chances are the bay is going to provide your solution. So if we wanted this to be enveloped, we might send this signal into our bay and then use an envelope to control it and then send it over here. I'm not going to get too far into that, but that's the sort of idea of what that's for. Undo that because we're not using it. In its simplest form, it's quite simply a mixer. So if I wanted that to be a sub, and there. Bit gutless. So if you want to mix signals like that, that's its initial purpose, and then I started realizing, oh, I could use it to do other things. So then you can start to bring in control by using these and controlling how much the envelope handles it. So let's give you an example of that. Let's be fair. Let's pull the plugs for now, just so you're seeing what we're seeing. So at the moment, there's nothing there at all. So we're going to plug that in. Let's use this envelope here. So that shows us using the bay to control the level of this second oscillator. We could output just a second oscillator to somewhere else. We could say, oh, look, I'm going to use that to phase distort. Gnarly, dude. The more you play with it, the more you'll realize that there are things that you can do here. Of course, you control how much that works. So once you understand how this sort of thing goes, you've got, oh, I can do that with that. You can get quite clever. The bay, just as a basic audio mixer, will be routed to the mix output. Quite simple. So we take our mix out, send it off to our filters. The other thing that we can do here, and it's a similar sort of feature, is we can use our ring modulator. We can be outputting that. So there's absolutely nothing to stop you from running your main signals as well. Adds a little bit of meatiness. But you can, of course, ring modulate from anywhere else that you wanted to. So we could be taking, I don't know, just those two. Casio. And if you don't want that audible, then you can just run it off as a CV. So the Bay is incredibly versatile. If initially you don't get it, you don't have to use it for anything at all. It's not an integral thing. It doesn't make sound. It's merely a way of modifying. So it's like in Thor. You say, I want LFO1 to go to Oscillator 1, but then be modified by the mod wheel. And this is that feature there. So you could fly in your parameter. Let's say we flew in our mod wheel here. We could then say, okay, I want that to control this, and you'd be done. So it's a modifier. You can use it to kind of do whatever you want. If you are looking to boost levels, to drive your filters, then this will do that. There are no distortion units inside this, but you can drive your filter a little too hard, which is what we're doing at the moment. Gives you that kind of ragged sound. Filters, output, that is basically it. Along the bottom, there are options for oversampling, to be honest. I don't actually like them. They chew, naturally enough, quite a lot of cycles. I don't really like the sound. You can change your pitch bend amount. You can change how many voices you have overall. I think it'll go up to 128. Far more than you rationally need. Monophonic mode. You can assign which note it responds to. Generally, you're going to want to leave it on last, but there were some synths in the early days that would choose the low note. So let's put re-trigger on. Pressing a higher note, nothing's happening. The lower note triggers it. Higher note doesn't. That was a way to try to work out, oh, if the person plays a chord, which one do we defer to? Is it more likely to be a bassy kind of instrument, or is it more likely to be a leady sort of an instrument, in which case let's take the top note out of that. Not things you're going to use, but because they're there and I could have them, then I put them in, because an instrument like this, it all comes down to something interesting. Hours of Angus Young. Fun. Your Portamento, it can be always on. You might have noticed there's a little bit of Portamento in this all the time. Off. Always on. Or it can be set to only legato. So only when you've got overlapping notes. You can choose which you do. There are some other options. We can choose whether the time in which our glide occurs is a constant time. So when we set the time here, constant time means that it's always going to be at the same glide rate. Or we can go to constant rate. So the further away you are between those two notes, the longer it's actually going to take to glide, because the glide is happening at the same coefficient, rather than saying, okay, whichever distance, it's going to be X number of milliseconds to get there, regardless. This is going to say my coefficient is I travel such and such an amount of pitch per number of milliseconds, which means that quite fast, quite slow. Constant rate was a little bit more common in the old days. Constant time is far more consistent these days. But the fact that it's there means that if you're really trying to sound sort of 1964, then you might want to actually swap across to constant rate, because it's actually going to be different between different notes, despite the fact that it says constant. So, small things. As to what you can do with this, have a listen through the presets if you haven't already. I've not been trying to make cool sounds. You'll probably heard some interesting sounds in here already, and sort of thought, I could do that. Then you're the right kind of person for this instrument. If you're wondering, oh gee, $20 for this pack. Not so long ago, Cherry Audio sold a 2600 ARP 2600 clone. Nice little unit. Monophonic. You could force it into duo, but it was really a monophonic instrument. This is polyphonic. It has really the same, if not more, features, including whatever that is, which I'll have to put on screen. And as to which filters you prefer, I don't know, but this particular filter set, particularly this Moog style ladder, very well respected, like really well respected. So in terms of, it's up to you to find value or not find value, but if you're comparing it to a modular, then you will probably find that for less than it costs to buy something that's not dissimilar to this, you get 9 other units, which are really all about character. Up to you to decide what you do, but that's my logic and my thinking here. Any questions? Ask them down here. Please understand, this is a synth that's going to reward you the more you understand how it thinks, and it does not think exactly the same as a modern synth. It's deliberately designed to think far more like an ARP 25 or 600, a Roland System 100, than anything else. If you've got like a modular, a full box and dice thing, then this kind of thinks like that. Have fun. That's the important thing. Have fun.